Okay, so I saw As Above, So Below over the weekend, and I really like the soundtrack, especially this piece right here by Shaka Amos. Now, I did a little looking into him. It turns out he's a philosopher, historian, poet. He's really an enigmatic figure in Egyptian history and how it's been totally revised to erase a lot of the blacks from the picture. And I thought it was really brave of the studio that produced As Above, So Below, a found footage horror movie, to incorporate that into their film with the constant references to Egypt and shit like that. So I just wanted to play this song from the movie before I get into the review. So here we go. Okay, that's enough of that. Okay. So, As Above, So Below is a found footage horror film about a lady who wants to go into the fucking. Well, I guess she doesn't want to go in the catacombs, but she likes going in caves. As the film starts off in media res, where she's going into some Iranian hellhole to find what looks like to be one of those statues where you bring your baby and burn it. This Murdoch or Muldoch or I forget the name of that pagan deity that I think the Jews used to burn babies in or something like that. I don't quite remember the history all that much, but that's what it reminded me of. And she's looking for the Philosopher's Stone, which is something that her father was interested in researching, how that kind of shit always goes in these kind of, like, I have to carry on the legacy of my parents, and everybody thought my dad, mom, mentor, whatever, was crazy, but I'll show the world. So the film starts off with that kind of initial premise. And then you would think that when is anything scary going to happen? This is a horror movie. It's found footage. When is anything meaningfully interesting going to happen? Or is it going to be a claustrophobic wing fest? So before I really get into the story and the themes, really there's just one theme I want to talk about. Let's just do a quick and dirty review. I think it's like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. And the thing that makes it better, I think, than every other found footage film is that it's really earnest. Is that if you ever seen Drag Me to Hell, which is like a movie, like you're watching it, and it's like the most movie you've ever seen, where like the things that happen only because of movie logic, but not anyone actually being a real human being. It feels like it's all actors and they're just like moving. It's less realistic than a play. Whereas As Above, So Below, all the characters buy into being their character. That doesn't mean that they buy into the bullshit going on, because one of the best characters in the film, the black cameraman, which is kind of unfortunate that we have a black character in the movie, but he's behind the camera, and they do show him enough. But it's kind of interesting, actually. Maybe America just wasn't woke enough to have a black guy on screen yet, So that's why they had to make him the cameraman. But he's the best character in the fucking movie. And spoilers, but it's bullshit that he had to fucking die. I feel like he should have been the only person left alive at the end, and he should have been like, man, I gotta stop trying to fucking chase white women or something like that. Because in the beginning, it seems like the premise is that he says he's like doing a documentary, but he's only following her. It just seems like he's like, hey, yeah, like I'm doing a documentary, but he really just wants an excuse to like, record this like hot girl, all the time. That's kind of honestly like one of the premises I thought the film was going to go down, but it doesn't actually go that way. But I thought it would be funny to have that kind of twist ending, as opposed to like, oh, we've had a conflict and we got through it and yay, we're okay now. Instead of like, oh, like my introduction into the story is born out of just like, I wanted to have sex, and now it's like, man, fuck, I gotta change my life because that was just too much bullshit. I feel like a film where a character learns something simple but goes through so much is really powerful, and we don't see that enough. Whereas in this film, I don't think any of the characters learned anything other than just like, thank fuck my brain can manifest reality around me. But I actually don't remember the sound. The sound design in the movie was okay. The music, I don't think there really was any, because it's like found footage, so you can't really like edit in music in a way that makes sense. I did notice a few editing issues. There was a part where a girl has like she had like some piece of clothing on, and it was like a part where they were like getting situated or putting some shit on, and then in another part they were like cutting to some guy doing a joke, and then she didn't have it on, and then it cut again, and then she had it on. So like it was like a little bit anachronistic maybe, in that like this was from an earlier part, but we just like cut it in between this to like bring some levity. I'm not really sure, but either way, it didn't match up with what the fuck was like going on consistently. So, but whatever. The film, I don't know. The film has one major interesting thought that you can have going through it, I think, is that the main girl wants to get the Philosopher's Stone. She is solely devoted to this idea, and to the detriment of everybody around her. She apologizes a lot, but you never really think like she really means it, because you can't apologize for almost getting somebody killed or leaving somebody in a Turkish prison. Like that's just a thing that like you got to do better. You can't apologize for that. You just have to do better going forward. And we don't really see her ever do better going forward. And she just gets people who are still willing to tolerate her to, you know, go along with her crazy adventure into the Parisian catacombs. And this is where the film gets more interesting. I would say up until that point, it was like, what's that movie with Nicolas Cage? The National Treasure. I was gonna say American Treasure, but which is really what it should be called. But yeah, the film was kind of like a National Treasure, with like they're trying to get the Philosopher's Stone, and they're like burning, oil on the back of these tomb things, and it just seems ridiculous. The whole movie is really ridiculous with how right the girl is the entire time, until we get to a moment later on in the film where I actually want to read this. So the main girl, she gets to, the fuck was that? I don't know, sound like something fell over. The main girl gets to this like tablet thing or whatever. Basically, it's where the Philosopher's Stone should be, and she reads this phrase, or she like thinks of something or whatever. Or there's something written. It's like as above, so below, and she's like, "Oh, that's the phrase, the key to all magic." And then she has this basically like a paragraph here where she explains it. She says, "It means basically what is within me is outside of me. What is on earth is in heaven. As I am, so are my cells, so are my atoms. Basically, what I believe the world to be, so it is." And when she said this, the first thought I had was that is a very solipsistic idea. And solipsism is basically, at the root level, a form of extreme egoism, where you can only be sure that you exist because you can't know anybody else's mind or anything like that. The only thing that you can know is the experience that you have, and you can't really be sure that anybody else is even real. This could all be, your mind manifesting a bunch of bullshit. You could be a floating energy ball, and this could all be just in your floating energy ball mind or something like that. Now, that's a very niche, extreme idea in solipsism, but that's like kind of the joke in philosophy, is that solipsism is basically just like a nightmare of your own creation. But I think this film really actually subtly references solipsism by talking about this, like by having this specific interpretation of the as above so below uh parable. Because usually I think it's in the New Testament actually, and it has to do with like determination of like going to heaven or hell. But they, in this film, turn it into like, that phrase is the key to all magic. They turn it into something else. And it's kind of funny that the key to all magic is a phrase that basically is saying that solipsism is true, and that whatever you have inside of you, whatever you think, manifests itself out into the world. And that's what happens in the film. Everywhere the main girl goes, everything she says, everything she thinks, literally just is true. She goes to the fucking tombstone and she's like, "Oh, this guy is he's dead. but he actually didn't die. He invented the thing and he faked his death or whatever. And then sure as shit, yeah, he faked his death and he put a little like fucking message thing in the back of the fucking tablet thing at his mausoleum or whatever. Or you go later on and then they're like at this like one, they're at another junction where they just can't figure it out, you know, and she just starts like spitballing like numbers. It is the most lunatic thing you've ever fucking seen, where she just starts saying random shit. Like if you were a person in this scenario, you'd be like, what the fuck? And sure as shit, it turns out that she's fucking right. And she's like almost always right. Like everything that she says comes true. Like the film is literally a solipsistic reality in her head. And even at the end of the film, she gets the guy that she like doesn't even, I don't think they don't even kiss until like they get out of the fucking nightmare world. They don't even kiss when they're down there like, oh, I'm gonna die. It's like, it's so crazy. And then there's like a kind of continuity error I think some people would see, because she gets the fake philosopher's stone at one point and then she heals a lady's arm, but then we find out that that philosopher's stone is actually fake because it can't heal her like not boyfriend. And then she goes back there and she puts the stone away, and then she's the philosopher's stone. Like she literally is, you know, the solipsism magic whatever bullshit, and she goes back there and heals him herself, and then they escape, and then she gets the guy, and it's just like, so how did you heal that other person if the stone was fake? Unless, you know, you read the little key to all magic, like what I believe the world to be, so it is. The film is literally a subtle, it's a film that is the rules of the film, how the world works, what can we expect, and what should we disregard or be skeptical of, are founded on the idea of solipsism, essentially. And I think that way, the movie elevates itself above so much found footage trash. And I like found footage movies. I've seen like all the VHS, and I don't think they're very good. They're only good if you like found footage. But this film had a decent plot on the face value that was charming and interesting, and you had dynamic characters. The black cameraman is awesome. I feel like we need way more, because I feel like he could have come across as racist if they made him like more ghetto, but I think he just came across as like a more regular black guy in a place that he doesn't understand. And his behavior makes sense because, you know, he's like he's doing camera work shit. So, you know, carrying a camera around is heavy work. You know, cameras are fucking annoying to carry around and shit like that. So he's probably like, you know, a buff dude and he's into cameras, but he's more regular, we would say, compared to the other people who we have the main boy interest, the main love boy. He fixes fucking bells and he's attractive. That's it. What the fuck is that? But we would assume that he has a pretty cushy life. Same with the main girl, because they both speak very well. They both dress pretty well. They look, you know, like they belong to a higher class. They look well kept, even when they're like all fucked up. And like the one girl has like 1,000 PhDs and everything like that. So you have people from different strata of class in the film. And there is the worry then when you have that scenario that if you have minorities, that you're going to portray them in a way that makes them look bad. And they didn't do that, I don't think, with the black guy. The black guy was the best part of this movie. They should have more genuine and earnest minorities in horror films, because, you know, I'm so bored of seeing like the white girl scream. I don't care about that shit. But seeing, you know, black people genuinely freaked out, and that's scarier to me, because I don't know that. I don't know how other people react to stuff, you know? Not that like there's like a whole race of like whatever people react certain ways. But when you get into that, it's kind of true. You know, a lot of the slasher horror, suburb, white family terror was a terror born out of like, you know, the application of a very sexually suppressive norm culture that pretty much only existed in, you know, white suburbs. So when you have that culture with that perspective, you get an average or a normalization of the response to terror, which is to scream and fear for your virginity. And that's boring. You want to see how other groups in other circumstances, in other walks of life, react to different forms of horror or terror. Oops. And I feel like this film kind of gave a window into that a little bit, because you have also like some kind of like party goers that are in the crew, and they're doing all sorts of other drugs. I would assume they seem like they did some drugs, but the film's pretty good. Really, there's not too much to talk about it in terms of like really getting into the nitty gritty interpretation or themes or whatever. There's like a theme about letting go of the past. Like everybody has these kind of old traumas, and you see that come up in the film. And then that even reinforces my idea of the solipsism theme, because what these characters believe manifests in these catacombs when they're at their most terrified, and they have to overcome their own mental hangups to get out. Like I think my interpretation of the film is spot on, and I think I'm a 10 out of 10 genius, and I'm so glad I can share it with the two people that will watch this video. So thanks for hanging out, and I hope you liked Shaka Amos. The song in the beginning is Shaka Amos by what the fuck? It's by Shaka Amos. The song is Egypt Was a Black Land. Thank you, Shaka Amos. He's my favy. And yeah.